Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
My mother-in-law secretly came to our home while we were at work. After setting up a camera, I saw something that made me immediately call 911. 3 months ago, my wife Carolina and I moved into a new apartment on the other side of town, farther away from her mother. Not that we didn't love Esperanza, but her overprotectiveness was suffocating us. She lived 2 blocks from our old place and would show up 5 times a day bringing bean soup, fresh corn tortillas, or just to check in and give a blessing. "Raphael, you're too skinny. Carolina isn't feeding you?" she would say every time, poking my ribs through my shirt, even though I had weighed a steady 80 kilos for the past 10 years. "Mama, I feed him just fine," Carolina would reply, rolling her eyes. "We literally just had dinner." "Dinner? What did you eat? That Chinese takeout from boxes again? That's not food. I'll make you real pozole, with white corn and pork, like your father used to love." And she would cook. Every single day. Our fridge was bursting with containers of food we couldn't possibly eat as a couple. Half of it had to be thrown out, which broke my heart. I grew up in a poor family and knew the value of food. But telling Esperanza to stop was impossible. She'd get offended, cry, say we didn't appreciate her, that she was doing it for us, that she'd die soon and we'd regret it. The last straw was the keys incident. One evening I came home earlier than usual. Work let us go because of an electrical outage. I opened the door with my key, but it wouldn't go all the way. The chain lock was fastened from inside. Then I heard Esperanza's voice. "Who's there?" "I, Raphael. Why are you so early?" "I'm just tidying up a little." I had to wait until she opened. Inside, the apartment was turned upside down. Every cabinet open, belongings rearranged, my vinyl record collection, which I had built over 15 years, organized by cover color instead of alphabetical order. "Esperanza, what's going on? How do you have a key?" "Carolina gave it to me," she said matter-of-factly, still folding my shirts in her special way. That evening we found out Carolina had never given her a key. In fact, she had deliberately avoided making a copy so her mother would at least have to call first. Esperanza denied it at first, then admitted she'd made a copy herself, just in case something happened to you and I couldn't get in to help. We tried to speak gently, explaining boundaries, that we were adults. She nodded, agreed, cried, asked forgiveness. And the next day, it all happened again. "We need to move," I told Carolina after catching Esperanza cleaning our windows for the 3rd time in a week while we were out. "But she's my mom, Rafa. I can't just." "Caro, listen. I love your mom. Truly. But this can't go on. We're 32. We've been married 8 years. We deserve privacy, our own space. That doesn't mean we're abandoning her. Just a little distance." Carolina was silent for a long time, then nodded. Her eyes filled with tears, but she knew I was right. We found an apartment in San Isidro, across the city. 45 minutes by bus from Esperanza's home. We hadn't deliberately searched that far. It just happened to be a good price, with a lovely courtyard full of jasmine and bougainvillea. The move was organized in secret, like a real covert operation. We told Esperanza we were going on a 2-week vacation to visit my parents in Guadalajara. She was upset we didn't take her along, but accepted our explanation that my parents weren't in great shape and an extra guest would tire them out. During those 2 vacation weeks we moved everything and settled into the new place. The apartment was brighter than the old one, with big windows and high ceilings. Carolina blossomed she could finally arrange the furniture the way she wanted, without fearing her mother would come and redo it all the next day. Telling Esperanza the truth was hard. We invited her to a cafe in neutral ground, we thought. She arrived all dressed up, in her best embroidered dress she wore only for special occasions. "Mamita," Carolina began, nervously twisting a napkin. "We need to tell you something. We moved." Esperanza froze with her coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Moved? Where? Why? Was there mold? Did the rent go up? Why didn't you tell me? I could have helped." "No, Mama. We moved because we needed some space. For our family." Esperanza's face shifted slowly from confusion to understanding, from understanding to pain. "It's because of me," she said quietly. "It wasn't a question." "Mama, we love you." "Don't, Carolina. I understand. I was too much. Too often. Your father said the same, that I smother people." She stood up, leaving her coffee unfinished. "I'm glad you have a new home. I hope you'll be happy." And she left without letting us finish, without taking the new address. The first weeks in the new apartment were strange. The silence we had longed for was deafening. I caught myself listening for noises in the hallway, expecting to hear Esperanza's familiar jingle of keys. Carolina cooked dinner and automatically made extra portions, in case Mama comes by. Esperanza didn't call for 3 weeks. Then she started once a week, after Sunday service. The conversations were short, formal. "How are you doing there?" "We're fine, Mama." "And you?" "All right. Father Antonio sends his regards." "Thank you. Send ours back." "I will." "Well then, I won't keep you." After each of those calls, Carolina would walk around gloomy. I tried to comfort her, told her that in time things would settle, that Esperanza would get used to it. But deep down, I felt guilty too. Maybe we had gone too far? Maybe there was another way to handle it? And then the strange things began. The first time I noticed something off was a month after the move. I came home from work and the dishes in the sink were clean, even though I was sure I had left them dirty that morning. I remembered because I had been late and decided to wash them in the evening. "Caro, did you wash the dishes?" "What dishes?" She called from the bedroom. "The breakfast plates." "No, I left before you did. You must have washed them yourself and forgot." "Possible. Work had been hectic lately, a new bank project, and maybe I really had been on autopilot and forgotten." A few days later, another oddity. I opened the fridge to get milk for my coffee, and on the middle shelf sat a container of empanadas. Esperanza used to make those stuffed with meat, raisins, and olives, a Chilean recipe she had from her mother-in-law. "Caro, where did the empanadas come from?" "What empanadas?" She came over and looked. "Strange. Maybe the neighbor brought them?" "The lady next door, Donna Mercedes, she asked yesterday if we needed anything." Logical. The neighbor was an elderly, kind woman. She might have left us a treat, though how she got into the apartment was unclear. Maybe Carolina had given her a key and forgotten. We ate the empanadas. They tasted exactly like Esperanza's, but since Donna Mercedes was also Chilean, the recipe might have been the same. Then I began to notice other little things. Laundry hanging differently than I'd left it. The flowers watered, though we had planned to water them in the evening. The kitchen floor washed. Books on the shelf rearranged. "I think I'm going crazy," I told Carolina over dinner. "Either I'm having memory lapses, or what? I don't know. Something stupid. As if someone comes here while we're out." Carolina turned pale. "Rafa, I noticed too. Yesterday my blouse was ironed, even though I know I left it wrinkled on the chair. And also, remember Mama's rose hand cream? I smelled it in the bathroom." We exchanged glances. "That's impossible," I said. "We never gave her the address. Or the keys. But she could have found out. Followed us. And the keys. Oh God, Rafa, she made duplicates of the old apartment's keys without asking." The next day I bought a camera. Small, discreet. I set it up in the living room where it could see the front door and part of the kitchen. I deliberately took Wednesday off. Told Carolina I had a client meeting, but went to the office to watch the recording from Tuesday. My heart pounded as I opened the file on my laptop. For the first 2 hours, nothing. An empty apartment, sunlight shifting across the floor. Then, at 10:17, the lock clicked. The door slowly opened. Esperanza walked in. She looked as always, neat hairstyle, a little floral dress, her ever-present woven shoulder bag. But something about her movements seemed odd. She entered hesitantly, glanced around as though seeing the apartment for the first time. "How everything has changed," she said. And then I realized the first strangeness: she wasn't talking to herself. She turned toward an empty spot beside her, as if someone was standing there. "Yes, Miguel, the furniture is new. Carolina always dreamed of this sofa." Miguel, my father-in-law, who had died 4 years ago of a heart attack. A chill ran down my spine. Esperanza walked into the kitchen, set her bag on the table, and began unloading containers. All the while she kept chatting with her invisible husband. "No, darling, they don't know I come here. I'm quiet, just like you taught me. Remember how you used to say the best help is the kind nobody asks for? Yes, I know Carolina doesn't like me coming uninvited. But you can see how they live. They don't even wash the dishes." She briskly washed the few cups in the sink, dried them, and put them away. Then she unpacked containers. I recognized yesterday's chayote soup, nopales salad, rice with vegetables. "They eat so little, Miguel. Rafael is wasting away." "What? No, he's a good boy, he just works too much. Remember when you worked in your youth? You came home like a squeezed lemon too." It only grew stranger. Esperanza began setting the table. But not for 2, not even for 3. She set 4 places, laid out 4 glasses, 4 napkins. "Carolina, daughter, come eat." What? Again you don't want to? You haven't eaten since morning. At your age you need to eat well. How old are you now? 10? 11? How time flies. She sat down at the table and began serving food into 4 plates. Then she took her spoon and started eating, carrying on a lively conversation with the empty chairs. Sometimes laughing, sometimes shaking her head in reproach, sometimes saying something tender toward the chair where, apparently, little Carolina was sitting. Don't play with your food, daughter. Miguel, tell her. You always spoiled her too much. What? I see. Rafaelito, good boy, you ate everything. Here's another tortilla. I know you like them with beans. Rafaelito. She was talking to a 4th, invisible person at the table. Who was it? And then it hit me, our son. The son we never had. The one we had planned for, dreamed of, but Carolina miscarried twice, and the doctors said the chances were slim. Esperanza continued her lunch for about half an hour. Then she stood up, cleared the dishes, all 4 place settings, washed them, and put them away. Now we have to check if everything's all right, she said, addressing the invisible Miguel. You check the bathroom, maybe the faucet is leaking again. I'll rehang the laundry, it should be dry by now. For the next hour, she went about the household chores methodically. She watered the plants. Miguel, look, the ficus is completely wilted. They don't water it at all. Rehung the laundry. Raphael crumpled everything again. Is this how you hang shirts? Swept the floor. Carolinita, lift your feet. What? Go outside? No, Mija, homework first. And then something happened that made me jump up from my chair at the office. Now I'll make you some hibiscus drink, like you love, Esperanza said, and went into the kitchen. She filled a pot with water, set it on the stove, turned on the gas. She took a little bag of dried hibiscus flowers from her purse. And then something seemed to distract her. What, Miguel? Time to go? But I haven't. Oh, yes, of course, your pill. Right. She bustled about, began packing her bag, completely forgetting about the stove. She went around the apartment, checking that everything was in place. She crossed herself toward the empty chairs, bless you, Virgin of Guadalupe, kissed the air above them, and headed to the door. On the recording, you could see her leave, locking the door behind her, and the gas flame was still burning under a full pot of water. I rushed out of the office like a man scalded. On the way I dialed 911, then Carolina. Caro, go home immediately. No time to explain. I called the fire department. I drove like a madman, breaking every rule possible. Rationally, I knew the pot was full and water wouldn't boil away for an hour or 2, but my heart pounded with dread. What if she came back and did something else? What if? I arrived at the same time as the firefighters. The pot was quietly boiling on the stove. About a third of the water had evaporated. Nothing serious had happened, but the fire captain was stern. You got lucky, senor. But this is very dangerous. If your relative has memory problems, she shouldn't be alone. And she definitely shouldn't have access to gas appliances without supervision. Carolina arrived pale, terrified. I showed her the recording on my laptop. She watched in silence, tears streaming down her face. My God, Rafa. She's talking to Papa. And to us, but as children. And to our son, I finished quietly. Carolina sobbed. What are we going to do? We went to Esperanza's place. She opened the door, surprised. Carolina. Raphael. How wonderful. Come in, I was just about to have lunch. Her small apartment smelled of food and rose water. The table was set for one. Mama, Carolina began carefully. We need to talk. Were you at our place today? At your place? Esperanza frowned. No, of course not. You never gave me the address. I don't even know where you live. She said it with such sincerity that I almost believed her. But Carolina pulled out her phone and showed her a photo from the camera Esperanza entering our apartment. That's not me, Esperanza said, but in her eyes flashed recognition and fear. Where did you get this picture? This is some mistake. Mama, you left the gas on. It could have been a disaster. I always check. Miguel taught me to check 3 times, always. She broke off, realizing what she just said. Mama, Carolina took her hands. Papa died 4 years ago. Esperanza jerked her hands away. I know. I'm not crazy. Sometimes I speak of him in the present tense. That's normal. Many widows do that. But her defense was collapsing. Confusion and fear filled her eyes. Did I really come to your place today? Yes, Mama. And I left the gas on? Yes. Esperanza sat down on a chair, covered her face with her hands. Something is happening to me. Sometimes I don't remember. I arrive at church and don't recall how I got there. I open the fridge and forget what I wanted. And yesterday I spent an hour looking for Miguel. I searched the whole apartment, called for him, and then I remembered. Dr. Hernandez was a man in his 50s, with a kind face and tired eyes. He specialized in geriatrics and neurodegenerative diseases. Senora Mendoza, he addressed Esperanza after a series of tests. I'll be honest with you. You have progressive dementia, most likely Alzheimer's disease at the middle stage. Esperanza sat very straight, clutching her handbag. Can this be cured? We can slow the progression, improve quality of life. But to cure it completely? No, senora. How much time do I have? I mean, before I completely. That's individual. It could be several years of relatively stable condition. But you need constant supervision. Living alone is no longer safe. In the car on the way home, Esperanza was silent. Then suddenly she said, "You know, Carolina, sometimes it feels like your father is right beside me. So real, as if I could touch him. He talks to me, advises me. Is that also the illness?" "Probably, Mama." "Pity. That was the only thing that comforted me. We brought her to live with us. Temporarily, we thought, until we decided what to do next. A nursing home? A caregiver?" Carolina took a week off to settle her mother into the guest room, see doctors, handle paperwork. Esperanza sometimes understood where she was, sometimes got confused. At times she looked for Miguel, at times she called for little Carolina to do her homework. Once I found her in the kitchen at 3 in the morning. She was making breakfast for Rafaelito. "He'll be late for school," she explained to me, mistaking me for someone else. "Boys his age must eat a good breakfast." I didn't try to correct her. I helped set the table, sat down with her. She placed scrambled eggs into an empty plate opposite, stroked the air above an invisible head. "Eat, you're growing." We hired a caregiver, Rosa, a Guatemalan woman in her 40s, with experience caring for dementia patients. She came at 8 in the morning and stayed until 6 in the evening, while we were at work. "Your mother is delightful," Rosa said after the first week. "She tells such stories. True, sometimes she gets confused about time. Today she said she had to prepare for her daughter's wedding, then remembered it was 8 years ago. We installed special locks on the stove. Now the gas could only be turned on with a code. We set an alarm on the front door. If Esperanza tried to leave alone, it would sound. We removed all potentially dangerous items. But the hardest part was emotional. Esperanza lived in several timelines at once. In the morning she might be in the present, aware that she was sick and living with us. By noon she could slip into the past, looking for her husband, preparing to bring him lunch at work, worrying that he was late. Evenings often brought a kind of clarity. She would sit with us watching TV and suddenly say, "I'm sick, aren't I? With that illness, the one where you forget?" "Yes, Mama," Carolina would answer, holding her hand. "I'm such a burden to you." "No, Mama. We're family. Miguel wouldn't want me to be a burden. He always said the main thing is not to inconvenience the children. Papa would want you cared for, Mama." One evening, while Carolina was making dinner, I sat with Esperanza in the living room. She was knitting. It calmed her, though the pattern was chaotic. "Rafael," she suddenly said, her voice perfectly clear. "I want to apologize." "For what, Esperanza?" "For being unbearable. I know you moved because of me. I smothered you with my love. Miguel always said it that I was too much, too intense. But I don't know how else to be. When you love, you want to give everything, do everything, always be there. You shouldn't apologize for love." "I should. Love can be violence too, if it's too much. I realized it when you left, but it was too late. And then I began to forget. And you know what? In a way, it was a relief. When you don't remember that your children ran away from you, it doesn't hurt as much." The illness advanced in waves. There were good days, when Esperanza was almost lucid, helped cook, told stories from her youth. And there were bad days, when she didn't recognize us, panicked, cried. The hardest day was when she didn't recognize Carolina. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" she cried, cowering in the corner of the bedroom. "Mama, it's me, Carolina, your daughter." "I don't have a grown-up daughter. My Carolinita is 11. What have you done with her?" We had to call the doctor, who gave her a sedative shot. Afterwards, Carolina wept on my shoulder for a long time. "She doesn't recognize me, Rafa. My mother doesn't recognize me. She does. Just not the you of today. For her, you're always a little girl." Rosa taught us how to respond properly. Don't argue when she's in the past. Play along. If she thinks you're the neighbor, be the neighbor. If she's looking for her husband, tell her he'll be back soon. Truth for her is whatever's in her head right now. We learned. I became Raphael the son-in-law, or Miguel, or the neighbor's boy, or the doctor. Carolina was sometimes herself, sometimes her own mother as a young woman, sometimes a friend, sometimes a nurse. But there were moments of piercing clarity. One day Esperanza sat in the courtyard, watering our jasmine with a small watering can. I brought her lemonade. "Thank you, Raphael," she said, and I knew she recognized me. "Sit with me." We sat in silence, listening to the city beyond the wall. "I'll be gone soon, won't I?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "I'll stop being myself. The body will remain, but Esperanza will be no more. I can feel it, as if I'm dissolving. Every day a piece of me disappears. You'll always be Esperanza." "No, I'll be just a body that needs feeding and washing. Promise me something." "What?" "When I stop recognizing you completely, put me in a good home. Don't torture yourselves. And don't let Carolina suffer. She's stubborn, like her father. She'll hold on until the end. But you mustn't. Life is for the living. Esperanza." "Promise." "I promise." She nodded, went back to watering the flowers. A minute later she turned to me. "Excuse me, young man, have you seen my husband? He should have come home from work an hour ago." Over time we grew used to Esperanza's invisible guests. Miguel was her constant companion. She sought his advice, quarreled with him, laughed at his jokes that only she could hear. Little Carolina was often there too. Esperanza would braid the air, murmuring, "Sit still, Mija, or the braid will come out crooked." She cooked her favorite childhood dishes, scolded her for unfinished homework, praised her for good grades. But the most piercing was Rafaelito, our non-existent son. Esperanza created his full biography. He was 7 years old, loved soccer and dinosaurs, did well in school but was shy. She read him fairy tales, taught him to tie his shoelaces, comforted him after nightmares. Once I overheard her singing a lullaby in the empty guest room. "Dormit mi niño, dormit mi amor, dormit pedazo de mi corazón." Carolina stood in the hallway, leaning against the wall, crying silently. "She's singing to our son," she whispered. "The son we never had," as if her illness gave her what we never could. Sometimes the invisible guests multiplied. Her parents appeared long dead. Brothers and sisters, friends from her youth. Our apartment became a thoroughfare for the ghosts of the past. "Mama, so many guests," she told Carolina, mistaking her for her own mother. "We must feed everyone. Help me with the tamales." And together they cooked imaginary tamales for imaginary guests, and Esperanza was happy. Rosa said it was normal. In her world there is no death and no loss. Everyone she ever loved is always with her. In a way, she lives in the best of worlds. A year passed. Esperanza's condition worsened to the point where Rosa could no longer manage alone. A night caregiver was needed, special equipment, constant medical supervision. "We can hire more people," Carolina argued at a family council. "We'll adapt the apartment." "Caro, we've already spent all our savings. And you haven't slept properly in months. This can't go on. She's my mother. And she asked us not to torture ourselves. Remember? We found a good home, Villa Esperanza. What irony. Private, expensive, but with excellent care and specialization in dementia patients. A large garden, bright rooms, qualified staff. The moving day was heavy. Esperanza was in a cheerful mood, thinking she was visiting relatives. "Miguel, did you take the wine?" she asked the empty space beside her. "You can't visit without a gift." In her new room we arranged familiar things, photographs, her favorite armchair, her knitting. She sat in the chair, looked around. "Nice room. Whose is it?" "Yours, Mama," said Carolina. "Mine? But I live with Miguel on Revolution Street." "Now you'll live here." Esperanza frowned, then shrugged. "If Miguel decided so. He's the head of the family." We visited every day the first week, then every other day, then twice a week. Esperanza didn't always recognize us, but she was always glad to have guests. 3 years have passed since the day I set up the camera to catch the intruder. Esperanza is still alive, but she is no longer quite herself. Just a body that must be fed and washed, as she once predicted. Sometimes there are flashes. She suddenly looks at Carolina with completely clear eyes and says, "Mija, you look good." But a second later her gaze turns empty again. Last week a nurse told us a funny story. Esperanza set the dining room table for 12 people, laid out cutlery, folded napkins. She said it was her grandson's birthday. The nurse laughed. Rafaelito was turning 10. We didn't correct her. We even brought a cake. She was so happy. She sang songs, told us what a smart boy he was. Carolina squeezed my hand. Our never-born son would have turned 10, counting from the first lost pregnancy. I never removed that camera. It still stands in the living room, but now it records our ordinary life. Sometimes I watch the old footage Esperanza watering flowers, talking to Miguel, setting the table for invisible guests, putting to bed a non-existent grandson. And you know what? In a sense, they all exist. In her sick mind, in our memory, in those recordings. The invisible guests who are always with us. Yesterday Carolina said, "You know, sometimes I feel them, Papa, our son, as if they really are here. It's just, I know, just exhaustion, stress, suggestion. But sometimes, Rafa, sometimes I think Mama sees something hidden from us, that her illness opened some kind of door." I hugged her, and we stood there in our quiet apartment where invisible guests once gathered at the table, where love was too great to fit within the boundaries of reason, where illness became a strange gift that allowed lives never lived to be lived. Esperanza was right about one thing: love can be violence if there is too much of it, but it can also be salvation if you learn to accept it, even when it comes with a stolen set of keys and an army of ghosts, even when it forgets to turn off the gas, even when it forgets you. Love remains when everything else is gone. And maybe, in a strange, fractured world, Esperanza is happier than all of us, surrounded by everyone she ever loved, living in all times at once, free from loss and death. The camera is still recording, just in case the invisible guests return. They always return.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.